Okay, so welcome to the self-organizing system workshop series. So we're going to do three 2-hour trainings, and today's session is going to be basic foundations, decentralization, and decision making. So it's an introduction and exploration of the foundations of SOS, or self-organizing system, and how these are connected to the principles that are maintaining SOS, or where it comes from. And so we're going to be explicit about how we organize the means we choose to organize. If we don't define the systems we use, we will likely be using inherited or implicit power structures and systems that we might not choose if we were making conscious decisions about how we organize. So the principles and values are what we use to collectively create the structures we need to challenge power. And we also will talk about autonomy and cooperation, transparency and accountability, mandates, which is how we describe the work we're doing and the tools that we use, actively mitigating for power, the basic structure, so groups that have a defined purpose and what the actions they will take to achieve that purpose, decision making and governance, and how to make decisions and implement them based on consent, and then also strengthening SOS in your group. And so this will basically talk a bit about the different methods that we can use to use decision making and mandates and roles and group agreements. And so today we will have 2 breakout rooms that are about 10 minutes each, and then also a break of about 5 to 10 minutes in the middle, so that everybody can take a little breather, because it's quite a long session. In the second session, we'll talk about coordination and the different roles, specifically internal and external coordination, and how to move people in and out of these coordination roles. And then also the last session, which will be in 2 weeks' time from now, is about meetings and facilitations of different types of meetings, tools, and documents that templates that we use, meeting methods, and also facilitation methods. So the basic foundations, what we want to do is have a familiarity with the foundations of SOS. So SOS is choosing how we systematically organize in small groups and at scale, in harmony with the principles and values, for the overall purpose of the movement, in this case, Scientist Rebellion. And any SOS group can use this organizational and governance model, which is based on the processes, the principles, and the structures for making decisions and taking action. And within this, the groups are semi-autonomous and self-governing. And this allows us to work towards the overall purpose of the movement in small groups and at scale, and no individual having authority over others or the system itself. And so SOS can support effective, clear, and functional processes widely, from how we work together across continents, areas of specialization, down to running meetings and facilitation, minute taking, making decisions, working in groups or affinity groups, local groups, and then the roles that each person may take in each one of those groups. So we have some key resources that I'll give out a crib pad that we'll be using to take notes in the breakout rooms. And in the crib pad, there's these 4 resources that we have. So it's SOS short guide, which I already shared in the All Activist chat, and then also how to write a mandate, and then integrative and consent-based decision making, which is the basic process that we use in facilitation of how to make important decisions in a group. And then finally, if we have time, we may not have time for it, the sociocratic election process. And but I will share this document anyways because it's an important tool that we can use to elect important roles such as coordinators. So one of the principles is that we have a shared vision of change, creating a world that's fit for generations to come. So this is having a shared purpose, and within that shared purpose, we work together in small groups and at scale. And if we can agree on how to work together towards the shared purpose, we can organize effectively. The purpose of the movement and the actions necessary to achieve those purposes is decentralized and distributed into the purpose of groups and the collection of groups or a role. And also we're based on autonomy and decentralization, and we create the structures we need to challenge power. So anyone can organize an SOS if they're following these basic principles. So that also means that we can have different a constitution for our group, policies, and that can help us organize in small groups and at scale. And this is because if people agree about how to do something and who is doing what, it's easier to work more efficiently and achieve our goals. Also, this means less duplication of work, less repetition of toxic power structures in society, because if you use SOS, transparency of who is doing what is expected, and people are expected to be accountable. And that means we distribute authority and distribute responsibility and tasks as well. And autonomy has various meanings, amongst them being the ability to self-govern, to make decisions or do things without asking for permission, and the capacity to make an informed and uncoerced decision. And decentralized means that there's no central authority, right? So we are collectively creating these structures we need. And to self-organize or choosing how to self-govern or choosing how to organize in groups towards shared purposes, we can agree to do so and agree on how we do so. And creating these systems and structures that we need to achieve our aims of the movement is part of our shared vision. We value reflecting and learning, and this can be practically done through embedding debriefs, for example, that we do after actions, short feedback loops, visioning, so visioning what we want to do as a group, aligning our purposes and our work that we're doing together to make sure we're going towards our vision, creating a strategy for our group, and also reflecting and taking action. So this is meant to be a cycle, right? So we vision, we come up with a strategy, we act on that, and then we debrief, we see, and we reflect on what went well and what didn't go well. So yeah, then we also have autonomy and cooperation. And how do we create the structures we need? So we have to be autonomous, and this can seem a bit contrary, but the idea is that we use this ability to self-govern and the capacity to make an informed and uncoerced decision in which we don't have to ask permission, and we can make a decision on our own, and we balance that with cooperation, and that means working together towards the same purpose, and we use that with the actions or processes of working together towards the same thing. So a very important aspect of SOS is transparency and accountability. And the more transparent we can be about what we're doing, it's easier to organize. So we make things more transparent by creating roles. So people hold roles with a clear definition of what their role is. We also do this through coordination roles and link roles to make sure that there is information flow between groups. And then the accountability to fulfill roles within the values and the principles. And this allows us to work towards our aims and to a respectful culture. Another tool we have is shared minutes, something that many groups already have, where we share our proposals and decisions, the processes that we use the actions that we're taking, and then the agreements. These are all different tools that we can use. And then different tools are also suited for different sizes and functions of groups. One of the most important thing is to have clear decision-making practices to increase the transparency and accountability, and to know who is doing what. So making a decision and making the power that the role holds explicit allows us to challenge any unjustified power. And working without any transparency and accountability allows implicit power and systems of powers to dominate. This will likely reflect in dominant or oppressive systems in society, right? So oppression works best when it's implicit and people don't talk about it. So at this point, we're going to do a quick exercise. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to put a crypt pad in the chat.
It's already there.
Oh, it is. Oh, thank you. So the exercise is basically to answer with your group, what kinds of power do you recognize in your working group or your local group or any groups that you're participating in? And how do individuals yield or produce power? And what could you do through practices or agreements to collectively build structures that we need to challenge unjustified power in your role and in groups? So quickly, I'll stop sharing. And so there should be enough slots in the pad to take notes. So we're gonna have you go back to your breakout rooms. We're gonna give you 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and give a bit of feedback about what you discussed.
So the breakout room will stop after 10 minutes. I will send you a message at mid-time and 1 minute before it closes. So when you see the message that it will close in 1 minute, you have still 1 minute. Okay.
Thank you,
and yeah, and don't forget to write anything in the pad. So is everybody there having? Do you have any problems to get there?
I'm going to open the rooms real quick.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for joining this second part. So we will talk about the 4 main types of power. So the first thing is the empowerment, which is the power to or the power within, which means that we have the freedom, the autonomy, and confidence to change things. And this is coming from Mrs. Hollett, if you remember, for those of you who were there in the introduction about SOS, where we were talking about her. The second is coercion or power over. This is the classical, control command, which is formal rank, title, position, company, role in your movement that determines what decisions you can make. And there is also the explicit visible power, which is the one I just talked about, and the implicit power, which is the informal influence, let's say the power of the ancient people in the movement, for instance, but it can also due to social status in other movement than ours, charisma also, or the reputation, this very whole activist that has done a lot of things, and this determines how much you are listening to in your group. So this is one thing, and now we can discriminate between these different types of power: the centralized, decentralized, and distributed. So first, a little more. So building from what we have seen so far. So we've talked about decentralization, which is ways of organizing and relating how we are structures and how do groups and rebels or people or scientists relates to each other. So these three types, centralization, decentralization, and distributions, are the main ways of distributing power. And we have all these systems within our systems, more or less represented in, let's say, in academic, it's more or less really centralized, at least in France. But the same holds for with most of organizations, including NGOs on movements, platforms that are centralized. There are these representation of systems show actually different ways of relating, and this is really important: the relation, the interaction between people. So if you look at the representation of the centralization, which is on the left part, of course there is a center. And movement is in and out versus the center. And decentralization, is not always bad. It's really efficient, actually. And it's often natural and a necessary stage in a group development, let's say when the group is very, very small, for instance. With the decentralization image, which is in the middle, actually here there are multiple subcenters and there is movement in various directions, but it's center to center. You have to go from your side to the center and then move to the next one and then go back to another point if you want. And in the distributed image, then there are lots of connecting nodes, like really a network, and lots of movement within all these nodes. And actually with SOS, we combine all three. And it is important to remember that actually, whatever structures we have, they are in flux. If there was no movement in this, in our movement, and things were really static, then we should be really worried, especially if there is no chaos at some points where, smart ideas will shine. So, and with some organizational agreements, and tools, we can actually navigate through changes, controversies, development, while helping to hold our values of the movement together. So which are, for instance, the aim and strategies that we have, our principles, and also the system itself or themselves, if we have several that cohabit. And actually the SOS, the self-organizing system, can really help to hold all these things. And this could be seen in, for instance, the centralization of purpose, but also we have the decentralization of structures and processes in an intentional ways. For instance, the distributed decision-making. So the decisions and power are embedded in system itself. But it allows also rapid feedback loops and wide-scale participation, as you know, from all the chapters. And also, and since we are scientists, we use a lot of technologies, like, for instance, these media. And also, we use peculiar nodes, which are actually the roles, and we will talk about roles. But these roles, they act like nodes. And what connects all these nodes, or if you prefer activities, it's our intentions and values. So we need to have a clear shared purpose and strategies that are guided by these values for all of these nodes spread into the movement to be really most effective altogether. So this is a representation. You have plenty of representation of the self-organization. And very often we use this kind of drawings with circles. So the foundational structure is the group, okay? And the group is determined by its purpose, and the purpose are actually modularized, and it is what we need to do. So these groups, they exist because of some kind of agreement, framework, shared activity, vision, whatever. And this shared purpose within the wider purpose, if you want, then requires also a focus which is based on the principles. So, for instance, we have a shared vision of changes, and shared agreements. So, which is the how to do things, the governance, if you prefer. And the groups, they can, of course, connect with each other in various ways. For instance, in a network, and for instance, you may have people, scientists, in our case, who have peculiar interests, for instance, in planes, you know, the flight, or specialization in climate or whatever, or intentions that naturally so connect over all these and work together, for instance, to share experience and support to be able, for instance, to block the planes so that they stay grounded. What is crucial here is the intention and consent, for which we are given authority and the space to cooperate to each other, and also by others consenting to us doing so. These are really the boundaries of the space we are working with, along with our principles or values, as you wish. And any group that is within our movement, SR, and that shares our values, and who will also share these self-organizing ways of interaction, then will be allowed to work efficiently. There is a problem in this representation of nested circles, is the interaction between the circles. Actually, we do not draw arrows, and which is bad, actually. But really, you have to think that all these circles, they are connected, and there are a lot of interactions, and we have also a liaison to allow this interaction. Once again, this is one way of representing this, and for instance, you may use other ways of representing this, like, for instance, a forest. That will be, and in this forest, every circle will be a tree, just to give you an example. Yeah, so how it looks like. So, for instance, this is, you know, a circle from XR, and this is the global support. This is, you know, you have a circle here, which is called system, in which you have finance, tech, structure, SOS. Here you have community, where you have, for instance, trainings, what XR is calling regenerative culture. Here, mobilization, partnerships, media and message, and so on and so forth, strategy, of course. And in this thing, this was in 2020, okay? But actually, if you look at the same XR global support in 2021, you see that it has changed. And this is really, really important. This is organic. This is dynamic. This is not fixed forever. You know, this is really also important to realize that SOS is really adapting to the resources at a given time, and things are not fixed forever. Really not. This is highly, highly organic. So for the same organization, between 2 years, you know, it can change. And from one group to another one also, it can change. This is, for instance, in UK, the action strategy circle, which is embedded in a wider circle. But in this sub-circle, what you have, for instance, is here political strategy, operations teams, and here, for instance, affinity groups and affinity groups network that are really embedded in this action strategy. And this also depends, of course, on the country. So each country in autonomy and decentralization can organize as they want. For instance, if you look at XR Argentina, it is like this, you know, with a different circle. I don't know if it's really updated. And also, as I said, this is a way of representing. This is from Glassfrog, which is a software. You can use other things like fractals, for instance, or you can use something that has nothing to do with circles, as I said, for instance, a forest. And I hope that soon this will be used in France. So if I go here, so what is really also important is the modularity. Really, it's what I just said before, giving the example of the global support. What is the most appropriate to fit your particular context is what you have to choose. So the self-organizing systems are really made up of many systems, modules that fit together, like if you want a Lego, and this allows for diversity to suit your local strategies. And it allows also the global movement to maintain togetherness, cohesions through the shared framework, which are your demand, our demand, and our values. So the people, they create different systems, groups. This is not a problem. And also the process that one group uses, for example, on onboarding procedure, might be a helpful module for another group to use, or another group that wants to establish itself. So likewise, the structure and roles in an actions groups might be helpful for other regional groups to use, or not, is as you wish. But at least you can share all these together. And something like an idea, a project, a group that starts off centralized and hierarchical can be modularized and distributed, including leadership. Leadership and decision-making is also distributed through the system of organization. Let's say that you have a very small group that just starts, you know, in your country. Maybe at the beginning, it's cool that it is centralized, but as soon as you have 8, 10 people, then you start, you know, this SOS system. So the group mandates distribute authority and decisions into roles. So the roles is taking care of the ongoing work in the team, and it can be seen as module. And the self-organizing languages and practices can be learned, adopted, like any other skills, cultural, social. This can be put together in pieces, or as pieces of existing system that can cooperate or integrate into a system with a wider scope. This is to say that even though you have a structure that is inherent to your group, now you can adapt the SOS to fit your needs currently. So the SOS can adapt to any existing structure that is on your group already. So we don't need to draw on a blank piece of paper a whole complex structure. It has to really adapt and evolve together with your needs. What we called tensions. The tension is the difference between the actual situation and what you want to obtain. So you have to build your organizational structures gradually. This is really, really important. Don't apply a full SOS in a group where you are only 10 people, you know. So the thing starts from people doing things. Often in overlapping areas or even different areas, and strengthening the self-organization of an organism, if you want to talk about organism for the movement, is about a lot of things. I mean, having clarity of purpose and clarity of work, building relationships and healthy work culture. The organism can develop at scale through integration and synthesis of smaller elements, at the same time as there being space for diversity and difference. So that was a wide overview of structure, from relationship in decentralized and distributed connections to the basic structure of a group and groups of groups, if you wish. So the needs to do something might start out within a group, and so you form a role. You know, that role might end up being something quite big, let's say that you have a role for, sensitization to do outreach, and you decide to organize a dinner. Then to organize this dinner, you will need a lot of roles. So it might be best for that role to turn into a group. Then you will have the group dedicated to this dinner, for instance. So in this image, the purple bubble that you see on the left is a role. The work in that role turns into a subgroup and be distributed in roles. Those roles again might turn into subgroups. Let's say that for the kitchen, you will have people taking care of the dessert, people taking care of the meat. No, this you should avoid, by the way. Only vegetables, and so on and so forth. So the modularity can help build your organizational structure gradually. So do not draw, as I said, on a blank piece of paper rule. That's really, really important to keep in mind. And to distribute authority, decision-making power, accountabilities, working load on different groups and roles. So you have really to distribute everything. So for this, you have mandates. And with this mandate, we really explicit the power distribution and give a sense of responsibility to all members of the organization so that they feel empowered to take decisions and have the creativity to fulfill their role. We will see this with election. We want people to really engage themselves and to feel empowered. That's really important. For this, we have this mandate that gives the framework for your role. And in your role, you are completely autonomous because we trust you. And the mandate, and we will see how we can write it. You have the purpose, the accountabilities, and the domain. So we will talk this, I guess, in the next slide. Yes, exactly, this one. So really the mandates are a key descriptive tool. So the purpose, this can be described as the reason or vision for which the organization exists or your group exists. So what would we like to see coming from this role? A purpose keeps the group or the organization together and really focus towards a goal that can be collective if it's a big group. So at more focused scope of organization and in different cultural space, it might help to have a more task focus on this purpose, something more concrete that the aspirational vision-based purpose, something like what is the point of this role or group? What does it do? What strategy is doing, what media and messages is doing. So for someone who really likes makes stencil designs, for instance, and wants to share this through all the networks, you have these nice things. There are various ways of describing what to do. One vision could be beautiful stencils used proficiently throughout the movement. And or it can be really more task focused, like providing resources and workshop on stencil making for local group. That will be really helpful for me because I'm not really good in art. So clearly, these are various ways in which a purpose can be thought. And also, you can have different scopes of purposes within the same purpose. Let's say that you have a big circle with a main purpose, then you have sub-circle in which you have a purpose. Each time you have these things where each circle is defined by its mandate, and each mandate is defined with the purpose. This is something we can decide as we want. And so that everything is coherent. I mean, with a lot of relevance between the circles. So what is the most important is that the purpose is really clear and concise. So not a full paragraph, just one sentence, or just one, just the real vision that you want to obtain. So it has to be easy to understand. So we are scientists and we are in academics, but it has to be really understood by everyone. So that anyone new will immediately figure out what your circle is doing, and therefore they can join your circle, which is cool, or they can pass away. And this is the same thing for the wider circle. So for the accountabilities, so these are the activities we do in order to achieve the purpose that can be collective. Or in a more task-focused approach, this is the ongoing tasks or things that need to be done. As these tasks are ongoing, it's easiest to write them starting with an ing, you know, in English. So it's always good to have this way of writing your things. For instance, for the stencil, it will be designing stencil, sharing stencil design, scheduling workshops, you know, always ing. So the domain now. So the domain is something in the ownership of a group or role. For instance, for media and messages, the websites or the Twitter or Mastodon accounts, they are the domain of media and messages. So strategy has nothing to do with how the Twitter account is run. So for instance, for the stencil maker, they likely wouldn't have a domain that will be, you know, on strategy issues. That's not the point. So this is really important, because then it also avoid any conflicts. For instance, if you prepare the dinner, and of course you need chairs and tables. So who will bring the chair and table? The people taking care of the room or the people taking care of the kitchen? Okay, you have really to precise the domain. So you say the people who are decorating the room, they will take care of the table and chairs. You see what I mean? That's really important. So, and now we have a question for you. So how can you encourage people in your group to take on roles, so within your working group, your own working group? So that's something that you could think about. So where is the break?
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention to you, Thierry. Maybe we should take a break now.
Yeah, that would be nice now. But you can, you know, think about it. So 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Next?
Yeah, let's put the... Okay, perfect. So welcome back, everybody. So we're going to talk a bit about decision making, how they're made, and what kind of decisions we make in groups. So in SOS, decision making, the things that we're going to do, tasks, and decisions are to make are devolved into circles, groups, and from groups to subgroups and roles. So decisions are decentralized and distributed. And that means that specifying tasks and decisions into roles means that there doesn't need to be a group decision-making process when it's not necessary. So making decisions in smaller groups is less time-consuming than if we're in a very large group. I'm sure we probably all had an experience with that. So the authority is earned through trust and the knowledge and ability to do something, and by giving consent at the relevant place or space or group to make those decisions. So for example, within a circle, we have a group mandate, and that circle then can make decisions that within their mandate, and within the group we have role mandates, so those role holders would then be able to have the autonomy to make decisions for their role. And then that way decisions can be made much quicker in fast changing situations. So for example, in an action, we all know how quickly things can change. So certain people who are in charge of certain decisions may need to make a decision very quickly. And if we give them the power by knowing what they're going to make a decision over, it's much easier for them to feel empowered to make that decision. And another way that we can make sure that they're doing this, taking into account desires of the group, is through input and feedback from the people or groups that are affected by those decisions, and those with other relevant mandates, or feedback from people who have the knowledge or the expertise. So maybe in social media, somebody who has experience with marketing might be able to give a role holder specific advice that could help, get more attention on social media. Or if somebody has a strong opinion or concerns about something that we have to make a decision about, it's also very helpful to get feedback and input. And this helps us make informed decisions and integrate the wisdom of the group, and also avoid unnecessary duplication of works. So now we're going to do another breakout room for 10 minutes. And the question that we're going to have is, what are your biggest challenges with decision making in your groups? So we'll do the same thing. We'll use the same pad. I'm going to stop recording here. Okay, so thank you for all your input. Yeah, we'll have more time to speak about this. If not this session, then definitely the fourth session. And also we'll have a Signal chat for you to share in. So talk a bit more about role holders. So decisions within a mandated role means that the role holders have the full authority to make decisions within their mandate. So many decisions benefit from multiple perspectives and integrating the wisdom of the group. And if you are a role holder, you have autonomy to make a decision about this. So how can we integrate the wisdom of the group? And that is through the advice process, right? So even if a role holder asks for input on a decision within their mandate, they still have full authority over that decision. So they can ask for advice, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily will have to take all of that into account when they make the decision. And consent-based decision making is used for governance decisions, such as new group mandates, changes to mandates, and then any other governance decision themselves. So for example, the systems themselves and how we make decisions, group agreements on processes and policies, and also group decisions with a certain mandate are often about work that hasn't been defined, is shared within the team or by some role holders. So if you don't have a role holder to make a certain decision about, I don't know, if you're in social media, the types of graphics that you want to use, then maybe it's something that a few people could discuss, or the group could discuss and make a decision about. And often this means that what needs to be done is putting that work into a role, or the accountability of a role. So this really depends on what type of decision it is. If it's something very important that the group feels that needs to be shared, then maybe they would make that decision together. And if it's something that we feel as a group we can give responsibility to a particular role, then we would put that into the accountabilities. So the biggest thing about SOS is to use consent and not consensus. So consent is no one saying no, and consensus is everyone saying yes. So we can see this on the diagram on the right. And so in consent, we want to make sure that no one objects rather than everyone is agreeing. And on the diagram on the left, we can see it's broken down into our preferences, and that's like what we would like to happen. Our range of tolerance, that seems okay. You can tolerate that, or you're okay with this, even though it's not your preference. And then an objection. So something that you absolutely would not be okay with. And the grounds for a valid objection are that any purpose is harmed by the proposal. So we use the minimum viable measurement for consent to be is this good enough for now and safe enough to try? So this is a question that we should repeat anytime that we are trying to make an important decision. And the facilitator usually can remind the group that is this decision or this proposal good enough for now and safe enough to try. This is so we can get things done, right? Because oftentimes we have very limited time. And with reflecting and learning, we can always review something and propose a change to whatever decisions we make. So the integrative consent-based decision-making process can be a specific process that people can practice. So the process itself makes decisions easy to make where there might otherwise be unnecessarily lengthy discussions. And this isn't always necessarily, as some things are non-controversial, simple, and everyone is already on board. So if something that's it's very easy to make a decision, we wouldn't use this process. Maybe the simplest way would just ask if there are no objections, and then we can move forward. So the short version is this, for something non-controversial, is the facilitator to ask, is there anything that would prevent you from consenting to this proposal? And if not, then the proposal can pass. And then otherwise, we can use the consent-based decision-making, which we're going to see now. So this slide and this particular way of making decisions is shared in the pad in our resources. And in the facilitation session, we'll go through it a bit more in depth. So we can look at about exactly how we would facilitate this. So where did the proposals come from? So proposals can come from a role holder within a team or across a few teams. And proposals can be really simple, small things like to change the roles, accountabilities, or it can be more complex, like a project proposal between teams, or a proposal for a way of working, or a process-based policy agreement. And it makes more sense to ask for consent rather than trying to get people to agree with everything before presenting the proposal. And this allows us to make faster decisions. So this process is integrative in that objections can be integrated into the proposal. And this is a way of harnessing the group wisdom and making better decisions. So what we do is, in this, the proposal needs to be clear. So what proposal is it? And sometimes there are multiple versions of the same proposal. And so we would need to make sure that the proposal is the right one. So the first thing is to have it presented. And then in the second step is the facilitator in a meeting would ask if anyone has questions, so we can take a round and ask that everybody has a chance to speak and give their input. And online, the facilitator can go through this alphabetically or as people appear on the screen. And this is only about understanding the content of the proposal. And the proposer can quickly answer those questions. Then after that, after everyone understands the proposal at hand, is people have a chance to share their reactions. And again, we go around in a round. And depending on the group and the time, the facilitator might want to limit the time of the reactions. For example, I like it, or it seems okay, but I'm surprised if it doesn't include X thing. And people can also suggest brief suggestions here along the lines of the proposal, like, I like it, but I think it would be good if something else happens, or if this is included. And then in the fourth step, the facilitator asks if the person wants to amend their proposal. So this is a chance for them to make changes based on the reactions that people have had as we went around. And then after that, the facilitator asks in a round so that everyone gets a chance if anyone has any objections. And if there are no objections, then that means there's consent. And we want to integrate the wisdom of the group, and objections help us do that. So in the next part, then the decision might be able to form a focus group to work on the proposal, right? So if there are any objections, the proposer can integrate them. But if there is a long conversation going on, then maybe we might need to take that out of the meeting and have a group focus on this particular proposal and come back with it and make come forward with something a bit better and that's been thought about with several people. What is important is to not spend too much time spent in a meeting about this. And if after many rounds, then maybe one or more than one, if there's consent, that means no valid objection, then the proposal moves forward. And like I said, we'll speak a bit more about this in the third session.
And don't forget to celebrate the decision.
Yes, of course. Always celebrate when when we make an important decision. Okay, so this is something also a bit complicated for a lot of people, but we're just going to go over it quickly so everybody can have it in mind. And there's a document in the pad so that everybody has it as a reference. And it's what we call the associocratic election process, or the integrative election process. And this can be used to nominate role holders and elect them, right? So especially for important roles like internal or external coordinator, which we'll talk more about next week, this is something that I really advise you to use. Maybe there are other roles that are quite small, and it's maybe people can self-nominate or volunteer, and there's no problem. But maybe if it's something very important where you need to have the trust of the group, then I would advise using this. So it basically goes like this. There's a description of the role, right? So we share a mandate and the term of the appointment. So maybe that's 3 months. And then we also discuss a bit the qualities that we would like to see of that person to fill the role. And they are reviewed and then agreed on by everyone in the circle. And then there's an opportunity for questions to clarify what is intended, similar to the consent-based decision-making. And then everybody, once everybody has clarity and there's a mandate that everybody agrees on, then everybody in the group writes down the name of someone they would like to nominate for the role. And then the nominations are shared. In this context, for example, online, we could do it in the chat. And each person then would have a chance to explain the positive reasons why they have nominated someone without commenting on other candidates. And then after that, after everyone has had a chance to speak about their nomination, then each person has the opportunity to change their nomination. And if somebody decides to change their nomination, then they can also give the reasons, positive reasons why. And then after having heard the different reasons for nominations and taking into account the criteria that the group has agreed on for the role, the facilitator makes a proposal for who to elect, right? So this is not the same as, you know, the majority always wins, but having this conversation to make sure that everybody can hear reasons why they want to elect this person. And then after the facilitator makes this choice based on all the arguments that have been heard, everyone is asked if they have any objection to the proposal of this candidate. And if there are any valid objections, then the facilitator can make a new proposal that seeks to integrate them. So maybe, I don't know, for example, we've somebody who's new, who hasn't taken on a very important role before. Maybe you could say, maybe somebody objects and says, after we select somebody, and say, well, they don't have much experience, and maybe that they might feel a bit overwhelmed. So maybe the facilitator could take this into account by saying, okay, meanwhile, then we will have the previous role holder assist them for 2 weeks. or a month or something like this. It's a way of integrating it. And then also finally, when there are no longer any objections, the nominated candidate is elected. And then finally, as Thierry said, we have a celebration for our new elected role holder.
There is also an important point, which is when someone steps back for the nomination, for instance, because the person holds another coordination role or because of private reasons that have not to be shared. And this can be included in step 4 or 8. And I would rather prefer the step 4 because then it's not an objection, you know, it gives the opportunity to people to say, oh, well, you nominated me, thanks, but I'm also coordinator in another circle and I can't be coordinator of these 2 circles. To limit the power, so therefore I step back. So this is also a possibility. Check.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. Very good point. So yeah, in this we would not, for an external coordinator or an internal coordinator, we try to, avoid at all costs that anyone takes on 2 coordination roles because it would be too much accumulation of power. Okay. So finally. So that's pretty much it. What we have in the pad, as I said, are these resources that you can use. And also, I'm going to share now a Signal chat in group so everybody can join. And there we can answer questions that we don't have time for today. And yeah, I'm going to stop the recording. So thank you all for being here. And then if we have just a couple minutes, we can answer questions.